She gave him the throne, crushed his enemies, and ruled Rome from the shadows in his name. She raised him to be emperor and believed she owned him forever. But power does not tolerate two masters. Behind palace walls of gold and marble, a son began to fear the woman who made him ruler of the world. What followed was not a sudden act of madness, but a slow, calculated descent into betrayal, humiliation, and terror. Before ordering her death, Emperor Nero Claudius did something far more disturbing, something Rome whispered about in horror, something ancient historians barely dared to record. This is the true story of what Nero did to his mother before he destroyed her.
Don't forget to subscribe. Click on the bell so you don't miss the releases. Write your favorite story in the comments. In the year 54 AD, Rome celebrated the rise of its youngest emperor. Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus was only 16 when the Senate declared him ruler of the largest empire on earth. To the public, he appeared gentle, cultured, and eager to restore harmony after years of paranoia under Claudius. To those who understood the mechanics of power, however, it was clear that Nero did not rule alone. Standing behind the throne was Agrippina the Younger, his mother, his architect, and his most dangerous ally. She was the daughter of Germanicus, sister of Caligula, niece and wife of Emperor Claudius. Agrippina had survived exile, accusation, and scandal to achieve what no Roman woman ever had before: absolute influence over the imperial throne. Nero was not merely her son, he was her instrument. From the moment Nero became emperor, Agrippina acted as co-ruler. She attended Senate meetings behind a curtain. Coins were minted with her face beside his. Official documents bore her authority. Foreign ambassadors were instructed to treat her words as law. Rome whispered that an emperor wore a woman's shadow. At first, Nero accepted this arrangement. He was young, uncertain, and raised to obey her will. Agrippina controlled his tutors, his advisors, and even his personal relationships. She selected his teachers, including the philosopher Seneca and the commander Burrus, believing she could rule through them as well. Yet power has a way of reshaping those who hold it. As Nero matured, obedience turned into resentment. The first cracks appeared quietly. Agrippina criticized Nero's indulgences, mocked his artistic ambitions, and reminded him, often publicly, that without her, he was nothing. She referred to him not as emperor, but as her creation. In Roman culture, where masculinity and authority were inseparable, such humiliation was poison. Nero began to feel trapped. Every decision was questioned. Every gesture was observed. His mother controlled access to him, managed court loyalty, and threatened rivals with exile or death. When Nero fell in love with a freedwoman named Acte, Agrippina reacted with fury. She accused him of shaming the dynasty and undermining imperial dignity. For the first time, Nero defied her. That defiance escalated into open hostility. Agrippina responded as she always had, with threats. She reminded Nero that Britannicus, the biological son of Claudius, still lived. She hinted that the Senate might prefer a true heir. Soon after, Britannicus collapsed during a banquet, poisoned before the court. Nero denied involvement. Few believed him. From that moment on, Nero understood a brutal truth. As long as Agrippina lived, he would never be free. But killing one's mother was not just a crime, it was a sacrilege beyond forgiveness in Roman law and religion. Nero could not simply order her execution, so he chose something far worse. Nero did not move against his mother openly. Instead, he began by stripping her of power piece by piece. each act designed to humiliate rather than destroy. Agrippina was removed from the palace under the pretext of security concerns. Her personal guards were reassigned. Her access to Nero was restricted. When she demanded explanations, she received silence. The court watched closely. Rome understood the language of power, and this was a declaration of war disguised as protocol. Agrippina did not retreat quietly. She appeared at public events uninvited. She positioned herself where crowds would see her beside her son. She reminded senators and generals of her bloodline and her role in Nero's rise. She spoke of Claudius, of Germanicus, of the Julio-Claudian destiny that ran through her veins. Nero responded not with reconciliation, but with calculated cruelty. He began spreading rumors questioning her morality. Whispers circulated that she had seduced Claudius to gain power. Others claimed she had attempted to control Nero through incestuous influence. These accusations were not proven, but they did not need to be. In Rome, reputation was a weapon sharper than any blade. Agrippina understood what Nero was doing. He was erasing her authority by poisoning her image. For a woman whose entire life had been built on dominance and respect, this was a fate worse than exile. She confronted him directly, demanding restoration of her position. Nero, cold and distant, refused. Their final interactions were no longer those of mother and son. They were enemies speaking across a battlefield of marble and silence. Agrippina threatened to expose him, to reveal secrets of Britannicus, of court manipulations, of murders carried out in the shadows. Nero listened without emotion. His decision had already been made. Yet he still hesitated to kill her outright. The curse of matricity haunted Roman consciousness. Even tyrants feared the gods. Nero needed her death to appear accidental, unavoidable, or justified by fate itself. The first attempt was theatrical and grotesque. Nero ordered the construction of a luxurious ship designed to collapse while at sea. The vessel was presented as a gift, a sign of reconciliation. Agrippina, suspicious but hopeful, accepted the invitation. A banquet was held. Wine flowed. Laughter echoed across the water. As the ship sailed into darkness, the mechanism was triggered. The ceiling collapsed, crushing one attendant. The hull split apart. Panic erupted. Agrippina, strong and composed even in chaos, leapt into the sea and swam toward shore. Fishermen rescued her. The plot failed. When word reached Nero, witnesses described him frozen in terror. Fate itself had betrayed him. Agrippina, bruised but alive, sent word that she had survived an accident. She made no accusation. She said nothing. That silence was the most terrifying threat of all. Now Nero understood that subtlety was no longer enough. His mother had survived humiliation, exile, scandal, and attempted murder. If she lived, she would never stop. Before ordering her death, Nero resolved to destroy her completely, her dignity, her legacy, and her identity as a mother. What followed was not execution. It was degradation.
After the failed shipwreck, Rome held its breath. Agrippina returned to her villa on the coast, fully aware that survival had only intensified the danger. She dismissed guards loyal to Nero, trusting no one. Every sound at night carried meaning. Every messenger could be an executioner. She began preparing for death with the same discipline she had once used to prepare for power. Nero, meanwhile, unraveled. Witnesses later described nights of pacing, trembling hands, and sudden rages. He imagined his mother's voice everywhere. In dreams, she accused him. In waking hours, her shadow haunted the palace corridors. Advisors urged restraint, warning him that another failed attempt would destroy him.
Others whispered that only one path remained. Nero chose it. He summoned trusted freedmen and members of the Praetorian Guard. No senators were consulted, no decrees were written. The order passed quietly, mouth to ear, like a curse. Agrippina was to die immediately, without ceremony, without spectacle, without the mercy of explanation. The assassins arrived at her villa under cover of night. Agrippina knew why they had come the moment she saw them. There was no panic in her response. Ancient sources record that she stood tall, refusing to beg. When they hesitated, unsettled by her composure, she spoke words that would echo through history. "Strike my womb," she said. "It bore Nero." The blade fell. Rome awoke to rumors rather than announcements. Officially, Agrippina had committed suicide. Few believed it. Fewer dared to say otherwise. Her body was cremated hastily. No public funeral was allowed. No statues were raised. Her name vanished from inscriptions as if she had never lived. Nero attempted to celebrate his freedom. He held games. He sang publicly. He declared himself released from tyranny. Yet the empire felt something had broken beyond repair. The murder of a mother violated more than law. It shattered cosmic order. The consequences were immediate and psychological. Nero began seeing Agrippina everywhere. He claimed her ghost appeared at night, staring in silence. He consulted magicians and priests to banish her spirit. None succeeded. Guilt clung to him like smoke. The Senate issued formal praise for Nero's courage. Temples offered sacrifices in thanks for his safety. Rome pretended to move on, but whispers spread across taverns and villas alike. If an emperor could murder the woman who gave him life, there were no limits left. Agrippina's death did not secure Nero's reign, it poisoned it. From that night forward, his rule descended into paranoia, cruelty, and spectacle. He trusted no one. He punished without reason. The murder that was meant to free him instead enslaved him to fear. History would later remember Nero as a monster. But before ordering her death, he had done something worse than kill his mother. He had erased her humanity, and in doing so, he erased his own. With Agrippina gone, Nero discovered that silence was far louder than her voice had ever been. The palace felt hollow, stripped of the one mind that had shaped it. Power now rested entirely in his hands, yet it felt heavier than chains. He had removed the architect of his rise, but he had also destroyed the final restraint on his own nature. Nero began rewriting the past. Poets were ordered to portray Agrippina as a monster who had abused her son. Courtiers repeated the story until it sounded like truth. Statues were quietly removed. Coins bearing her image were melted down. History itself bent under imperial command, but memory did not obey. The emperor's behavior grew erratic. He avoided the coast where she had died. He could not sleep without lamps burning. Servants whispered that he screamed at night, convinced his mother was calling his name. He accused advisors of conspiring with her ghost. Executions followed suspicion, not evidence. Nero's cruelty turned outward. Former allies vanished. Senators were accused of treason for careless words. Rome learned that survival required silence. The emperor's paranoia became policy. Fear replaced law. Public spectacle became his refuge. Nero sang on stage, forcing the elite to applaud. He raced chariots, craving cheers louder than his thoughts. The people watched, confused and uneasy. An emperor was not meant to beg for applause. something was wrong at the center of the world. Then came the fire. When Rome burned, flames consuming districts for days, many remembered Agrippina. Rumors spread that Nero had played music while the city died. Whether true or not, the image endured. A ruler who murdered his mother could burn his own capital. The line between truth and belief no longer mattered. Nero blamed Christians. Executions followed, public and theatrical. Rome became a stage soaked in blood. Yet even as he punished others, Nero felt hunted. He believed Agrippina's curse had infected the empire itself. Rebellions erupted in distant provinces. Generals declared independence. Loyalty fractured. The Senate turned cautious, then cold. Nero responded with more purges, more cruelty, more denial. The empire was unraveling, thread by thread. In the end, no army came to save him. No mother stood between him and consequence. Abandoned by guards, condemned by the Senate, Nero fled Rome. Alone in a villa, he faced the same fear he had forced upon Agrippina. Unable to endure capture, he ordered a servant to help him die. As Nero's life ended, so did the Julio-Claudian dynasty. The line that had begun with Augustus collapsed under the weight of one unforgivable act. Rome would survive, but something sacred had been lost forever. History remembers Nero as a tyrant, an arsonist, a madman. But the moment that defined him was not the fire of Rome. It was the night he chose to destroy the woman who gave him life.
Long after Nero's death, Rome struggled to explain how an empire ruled by laws, tradition, and ritual had descended into such personal horror. Historians searched for turning points, moments where fate bent sharply. Again and again, they returned to Agrippina. Her rise, her dominance, and finally her murder marked the fracture line of the age. Agrippina had been more than a mother. She was a product of imperial survival, raised among conspiracies, poisonings, and sudden executions. From childhood, she learned that mercy was weakness and hesitation was death. When she placed Nero on the throne, she believed she could control the chaos she understood so well. What she failed to see was that she had created something Rome had never known before, an emperor who owed everything to one woman and despised her for it. After her death, official records became tools of erasure. Court historians rewrote events, painting Agrippina as unnatural, manipulative, dangerous. Nero's image, at least at first, was protected. Blame shifted constantly. Some said Agrippina forced Nero into violence. Others said she deserved her fate. These narratives allowed Rome to avoid a darker truth, that its system had produced a ruler capable of murdering his own mother without consequence. Private writings told another story. Letters uncovered decades later described widespread fear during Nero's reign. Senators avoided eye contact. Noble families sent children away. No one trusted the palace. Agrippina's murder had sent a message that no bond, blood, loyalty, or law offered safety. The cultural impact was lasting. Roman writers treated matricide as the ultimate symbol of tyranny. Plays and poems hinted at Nero without naming him.
Mothers became sacred figures in literature, contrasted sharply with the emperor who violated nature itself. Agrippina's ghost lived on, not as a haunting spirit, but as a moral warning. Even emperors who followed Nero feared comparison. They emphasized piety, family values, public funerals. None wanted to be remembered as the ruler who crossed the final boundary. Agrippina's death became a lesson whispered to every future Caesar. Power gained through blood would demand blood in return. Modern historians debate Nero's mental state. Some describe a young man broken by pressure, others a narcissist unleashed. Yet almost all agree on one point. The decision to kill Agrippina was not madness, it was calculation. Nero believed survival required it. That belief revealed the true sickness of Imperial Rome. Agrippina herself remains elusive. Victim and villain, architect and casualty, she embodied the empire's contradictions. She used power ruthlessly, yet died powerless. She shaped history, yet was nearly erased from it. Her final words, whether literal or symbolic, captured the tragedy of her life. She gave Rome an emperor, and Rome rewarded her with silence.
In the centuries that followed, Nero's name became shorthand for everything Rome feared becoming: tyranny, vanity, moral collapse. Yet beneath the legend, historians continued to circle the same wound, unable to look away from the moment that reshaped his fate. The killing of Agrippina was not merely a crime of power, it was a rupture in the Roman imagination itself. Rome believed in order imposed by tradition. Fathers ruled households, ancestors guided the living, mothers were revered as vessels of continuity. By ordering Agrippina's death, Nero shattered these beliefs. He proved that the emperor stood above nature, above family, above the past. That revelation terrified the empire more than any war. Agrippina's absence lingered like a missing pillar. Without her, the court lost coherence. Policies shifted erratically. Favor replaced competence. Loyalty became a liability. Nero's inner circle shrank as fear consumed trust. Every advisor imagined becoming the next problem to be removed. The people of Rome sensed the decay. Festivals felt forced. Triumphs rang hollow. Coins still bore Nero's face, but belief had drained from it. Power remained, but legitimacy had evaporated. Agrippina's death had severed the invisible thread binding ruler and ruled. Later emperors attempted to distance themselves from Nero's shadow. Some condemned him openly, others avoided mentioning him at all. Yet none could fully escape the precedent he set. The knowledge remained: an emperor could kill his mother and rule, at least for a time. Agrippina's legacy endured quietly. Archaeology recovered her name from fragments. Historians reconstructed her influence piece by piece. She emerged not as a monster, but as a woman shaped by a brutal system, navigating a world where survival demanded dominance. Her greatest mistake was believing she could control the force she unleashed. In the end, Nero and Agrippina became inseparable in memory: predator and creator, son and mother, tyrant and architect. Their story exposed the darkest mechanics of absolute power, where love becomes leverage and family becomes expendable. Rome survived their fall. Empires always do for a while, but the moral certainty of the early principate never fully returned. Something essential had been broken, something no law could restore. When future generations asked what destroyed Nero, the answer was never singular. Not madness, not art, not fire. It was fear. Fear born the night he chose to turn against the one person who had made him emperor. And in doing so, he ensured that history would never forgive him.